Hey everyone, Mr. DVB here. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing Tenet. So today, I finally saw Tenet. This is my most anticipated movie of the year. I've said this so many times in my videos, but ever since Nolan announced he would have a film coming out in 2020, it instantly became my most anticipated because he is my favorite director. He's made so many movies that I love. Interstellar, Inception, Dark Knight. Almost all of his films are fantastic in my opinion. And, well, after seeing Tenet, I still feel the exact same way. This is a really damn good movie.
How would you like to die?
Old.
You chose the wrong profession.
Well, that from here.
Hasn't happened yet.
So Tenet stars John David Washington, who refers to himself as the protagonist in this movie, and in this film, well, there's a lot to talk about. Without diving into spoilers, it's very hard to explain this movie's story, but basically you have the protagonist, who is brought into the secret world of espionage in an event where he tries to save the world from some type of World War III type event. But of course, this is a Nolan film, so it's not just your stereotypical spy trying to save the world type movie. He has a special element, which in this case is inversion. Now, going into this film, I was obviously extremely excited. I thought all the trailers were really good. I did feel like they were holding back, possibly, from showing us some really big moments, and they definitely were, because there was so much stuff in this movie not shown in the trailers that blew my mind. I think this is definitely, from an action standpoint, Nolan's best film yet. This movie was a joy to watch from start to end. Just a very insane experience, and there's a lot to think about with this movie, so from a story standpoint, it's kind of hard to really grasp everything on a first viewing just because there's so much that happens in this film. I would definitely say this is Nolan's most confusing film, and it's pretty funny because for the first half I didn't feel that way. For the first half I felt like I had a pretty good grasp of what was going on, but then the second the movie, there's this particular scene, and then from there on out, everything was just like, okay, this is gonna get harder to understand. But even despite that, it was still just an awesome experience because this movie, everything about it was awesome. I mean, the way it looks, it's shot on IMAX obviously, so it just has that very crisp look to it. Seeing it in an IMAX theater is awesome. You have the super loud sound, the deep bass, Ludwig Göransson's score, which I think was phenomenal. Everything about this movie from a technical standpoint is like almost flawless in my opinion. I think it's just excellent in that sense. So I'll start off with the characters first. I liked the characters in this movie. I've heard some complaints that they're some of Nolan's more forgettable characters. I definitely think they don't have as much emotional depth as some of the characters in his other films, such as Cobb in Inception or Matthew McConaughey's character in Interstellar. But I still really like the characters here. I particularly found myself liking Elizabeth Debicki. I thought she gave a great performance, and I think she definitely carries the emotional core of this movie. It's definitely not as strong of an emotional core as Inception or Interstellar, but it was still nice to have it there because going into it, I wasn't expecting that much of an emotional core. The trailers really didn't give me that, but there was still some to be found in this movie. John David Washington, I think, gives a very good performance. I thought that the humor in this movie, while there wasn't a ton of it, I thought it was just nice. I thought his character had a good amount of wit to him. I liked a lot of the scenes with him and Robert Pattinson. I think the two of them worked very well together. Robert Pattinson was another great actor in this movie. His character, Neil, was one of my favorites. I felt like he was a bit underused, but whenever he was on screen, he just carried this certain, I guess you could say, like, feeling, a certain amount of charisma or whatever that I just really thought worked and added that nice feel to the movie. So overall, characters I all really liked here. As far as the villain goes, there's Kenneth Branagh, who plays Sator, who I think was great in this movie. I've heard some complaints about his Russian accent, but I actually thought it sounded pretty good. It didn't seem too over the top to me or anything like that. But he plays such a really diabolical villain. I liked him a lot in this movie. And yeah, overall, really good performance from him. So from a character standpoint, I really like this movie. I don't think it's as strong as some of his other films just because it doesn't have that emotional core for all of its characters, but I do think they all work very well in this movie. Now let's talk about the story. Again, I can't dive too much into things just because there's so much to discuss here, but I thought it was pretty interesting. At first, just from the trailers and things I'd read online, I felt like this was going to be a very basic story just about saving the world, which it is. And that's what I like about Nolan's films, is he has these stories which, on the surface level, are pretty basic, but there's so much more into them because, like I said, he has his special, I guess you could say, like, plot devices. For example, in Inception, it's all about dreams within dreams within dreams and how time is represented in that standpoint. But Inception, at the core of that movie, it's a film about a guy trying to plant an idea in a person's head and trying to get back home to his kids. Interstellar is a film about a man trying to get home to his daughter, but the movie also has all of this fascinating science stuff with wormholes and black holes and how gravity and time is represented. So he's really good at doing that. He's really good at having these really interesting sci-fi elements and these confusing things that make the film enjoyable from a, I guess, technical standpoint or from a really cool visual standpoint. But he also has simpler stories that can be grasped, I think, for the most part on a first viewing. It's just on repeat viewings you get the meat and bones of the film more so. But yeah, really awesome experience. I like the story here. Again, it's a pretty simple save the world type plot, but I think it worked well here. It didn't feel too cliche just because of how he includes inversion. Now let's talk about inversion. Definitely his most confusing, device he's used in a movie yet, but by far his coolest in my opinion. There were so many moments in this film where my mind was just blown. Like, a lot of action sequences that I think were incredible. I definitely think this is his strongest film from an action standpoint. You'll get certain scenes where one character is fighting another character who is inverted. So it's really cool just watching somebody fighting someone else who's old janky because their movements are all messed up since they're fighting in reverse. And it was really cool seeing that. There's a lot of really big set pieces that were sort of teased in the trailers, like the 747 crash, or this building that's being blown up in reverse. Lots of cool moments like that, which, on the big screen are just so much more better. Like, they're just insane, and that's not even technically proper English, but yeah, it's pretty awesome watching these sequences unfold in this movie on the big screen. Definitely a film worth seeing on IMAX if it's safe to go. Again, I know there's a huge thing right now about COVID, and it's hard to go to the theaters in certain places, so if this is a film that you can see safely, definitely go see it in theaters, because it's a massive, incredible experience. The sound is so great. Let's talk about the sound for a second, because this is actually a common complaint I have heard with this film. Probably the most common is that the audio mixing is really bad, that dialogue is way quieter than the music, and the music's so bassy. And it's true that the music is very bassy, but I honestly didn't have a huge problem with understanding things. There was maybe about 2 scenes where I thought it was a little bit hard to, necessarily understand what characters were saying. One was a scene that didn't involve any music or background noise. I just thought the characters' voices were a little bit too low on the audio track. The other scene, there was some sounds going on in the background, or really heavy sounds from wind and water and stuff, over top of characters who are kind of sounding like Bane with their muffled voices because the masks they're wearing. So it could get hard at times, especially when you have characters with really strong accents, whether it's Aaron Taylor Johnson with a really strong British accent, or Kenneth Branagh with a strong Russian accent. But these are kind of typical things for Nolan films, and I honestly didn't think it was that bad from an audio mixing standpoint. I could still make out most of the film. But yeah, overall, a really great experience. It's kind of hard to dive into any issues because, to be honest, I didn't have many with this film. I definitely feel like it's a movie I need to watch more times to understand things more. So yes, the third act was very confusing, but I still, it didn't detract from my experience, right? I didn't feel like, coming out of this movie, I'm going to lower my rating because I didn't entirely understand everything. This is a Nolan film. The more you watch them, the more you tend to understand. And that's how I think this movie's going to turn out. So in the end, guys, Tenet's a great movie. I don't really have much else to say besides that. It's just an amazing experience. The action sequences are by far the best Nolan's had. I think he's definitely improved in the fight choreography category, because in some of his previous films, the choreography was a bit of a problem, especially in the Dark Knight movies. Here, I don't think that's a problem anymore. There is still some shaky cam used during some fight sequences, but the whole concept of inversion was done so flawlessly in my opinion. It looks so awesome, and the final act is massive. It's really, really awesome. And last thing I guess I'll touch on before I get on to my overall thoughts is the score. This movie is scored by Ludwig Göransson. This is the first time since The Prestige Nolan has not worked with Hans Zimmer. And the thing is, Hans Zimmer and Nolan go together like John Williams and Steven Spielberg. They're two, just great people working together to create these really amazing experiences. I think one thing that Hans Zimmer does great is have these quieter, or at least more contained emotional scores. For example, Time Inception is probably my favorite score to come from Hans Zimmer. I also think a lot of the themes like Cornfield Chase or Stay and Interstellar are very strong, but on top of that he also has Dream Collapsing in Inception, or No Time for Caution in Interstellar. He's great at having emotional scores and action scores. With Ludwig's score, I didn't think there was necessarily any emotional scores because, like I said, this isn't a film that has a huge emotional core like his other films, but I do think from an action standpoint, it was very techno-sounding, very synthy, very bassy, definitely the most impactful score. I mean, you're feeling it in your seat. The music, the bass will drop and you'll just be like, oh, I felt that. It was pretty awesome, so really good experience. In the end, guys, definitely see Tenet if you can. It's an excellent movie. I think one of Nolan's best. But again, it's kind of hard to rank the movies because I think the majority of his films are great. But yeah, awesome experience, one definitely worth watching, and yeah, I'm definitely going to go see this movie a few more times to grasp what it's all about. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you, I was so excited for this movie, and I'm so glad I got to see it, so catch you guys next time.